Hi guys, it's Sam Coppolino from Elvis Duran in the Morning Show, and I am here on another episode of CEO Unplugged with Dr. Harry Ritter. Hello, founder and CEO of Alma.
Hello. How are you? So happy to be here.
So doing well, the quarantine version. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So,
We're all figuring it out, right?
Exactly. So first of all, Dr. Ritter, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your prequel before Alma and kind of just let us know what Alma does, like in a nutshell. Give us the warm up.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, call me Harry. We had a conversation about this before the show. I always think about the fact that remember back to my dad and the way he was with this whole doctor thing. But you know, we're on this show. We're having fun in the morning, so let's be that way.
All right, you got it.
My story does start with medicine, so I think that is a very important part of my story and my background. So I started out as a doc. I was training at Mass General Hospital up in Boston in primary care. I came from a family of doctors. My parents were before me. I grew up in a household that really thought a lot about how do you support helping others live happier, healthier, more meaningful lives. And that was always kind of core to my personal mission statement and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do for the world. But I got hooked on tech and the opportunity to bring business model innovation and technology into healthcare to try to fix what I was seeing at the front lines were just broken systems, a broken experience for providers in the space trying to do what needed to get done. So my journey to Alma, was really lucky to get to work at Oscar Health for a bunch of years with Mario Schlosser and others there, which was an incredible experience. I started back when it was this little company. It was never that little, I guess. We were about 30 employees when I started. So I got to see what that experience was like to see this business really grow up. I got to see what it was like to be part of a really innovative healthcare organization that was focused on how could you make the experience simpler, more tech-driven, more accessible. And then fell in love with the mental health space. And that was sort of the genesis story to Alma. I fell in love with it for two reasons. One, because I saw what I was seeing at Oscar, where healthcare was a system that had so many areas that needed fixing. But if you asked what part of it was the most broken, and in my view, what part of it was the most important and underserved, it was mental health.
Yeah.
And I really saw that at Oscar. I saw the need for it. I saw how that was challenging people throughout the system. And then the second big part was my own personal journey. I lost my father about 2 years ago.
Oh, so sorry.
Thank you. I was a solo caregiver to him for about the 5 years before his passing. Started to see a therapist in that context, processing anticipatory grief, the loneliness and challenge that goes with that life experience. And for me, that was just this moment where my eyes opened up and I just said, wow, like, this has just totally changed my world and changed my life, changed who I am as a spouse, as a parent, as a colleague. And so that's really what got me really excited about what I could do to try to make the mental health space better. So that was sort of the kind of background on me and what got me to this spot. Alma, what we do, we are a membership-based network for mental health professionals. So when I looked at the industry and I looked at what was going out there, what I saw was so much need, so much demand. People were, especially pre-COVID, but especially post-COVID, I mean, just so much need. But when you looked at the providers in this space, which is really what I come from, right? I'm a provider in my soul. Some of the most incredible, compassionate, empathetic, amazing people in the world, but so underserved by technology, and almost all solo practitioners and small business owners. Mm-hmm. So these providers who are trained to be great clinicians don't really understand and have the tools or the time or really the desire to figure out how do you run a business more efficiently? How do you think about things like SEO and marketing and insurance contracting and all this other kind of stuff? And so what we asked was, is there a way for us to build a platform that really is first and foremost about how we support incredible providers and give them the tools they need to run a practice? So hence Alma and this membership-based community where providers join Alma, get access to our suite of services and tools to help them manage and grow their practice. We help them with everything from lead gen, running their practice, telemedicine, scheduling, billing, EHR, training and education, and then really importantly, contracting with insurance companies so that they can provide accessible care at affordable rates by becoming in-network providers.
Right. Yeah, the fun part that no one really likes to deal with afterwards. I remember, like, as a joke in one of my sessions, I asked my therapist, I'm like, this would help my wellness. Can you do the billing part for me? Like, is that possible? But it is just such a giant cluster afterwards. And a lot of people are in there I firmly believe there's no person who can't benefit from therapy, no matter what they're going through, happiest person in the world. it's just a great thing. So I ended up having a very long, like I had 3 that didn't work for me, road to kind of get to my, woman I finally landed on and I love so much. And I was very vocal about that. And people have asked me, how do you find it? How do you find it? And I just wish, I'm going to go on social media and update it, but I wish I knew about you guys months ago when I was having this conversation, because for me, it was luck. It was by chance, but you guys really kind of create a network where people whose first and a huge problem is, where do I start? And how do I know if they're good for me? You guys kind of make it a one-stop shop with multiple resources. You bring all of these businesses to one place for them. And that's huge. That's so great.
I appreciate you saying that. I think it's a big part of it. There's 2 things that you mentioned that I think are, deserving of comment. First is the blocks that keep people from getting care, right? And in my view, there's 3: stigma, discovery, affordability. So the first is, am I willing to really engage with my mental health? Do I appreciate the value of it? Am I willing to really think about its role in my life and erase that stigma that's existed for generations? The second step is, okay, so now your challenge, I want to do it. Where do I go? Right? And that's where we have a directory service so people can filter based upon different things they're looking for, whether it's gender, area of clinical focus, sexual identity, et cetera, finding the provider that's the right match for their need.
Mm-hmm.
So they can find it. Or we have a client matching team where we'll work one-on-one with you to help you find exactly the right provider in the community. And then the third part you also were referencing, which is affordability. Not everybody can pay $150 to $300 out of pocket and then hope their insurance company will reimburse some amount of that money. And by being able to create a mechanism for our provider community to come in network, we've seen during COVID in the last 6-9 months, people getting care at an average cost share of $18 a visit, which means that it's actually affordable for people to get access to the care they need. And that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we've circled it a whole bunch of times already, but what is Alma's specific mission statement, and how are you guys just so set up to achieve that for people right now?
Our mission is to simplify access to high quality, affordable mental health care for everybody. The way we do that is very, I think, important and I think unique. We focused very much first on the providers of care. We are a provider first business. We believe fundamentally that when providers have the support that they need, the system gets better for everybody. And so what we've tried to do is build a business that's really focused on celebrating and rewarding these incredible providers who have dedicated their life to a caring profession, and giving them that support infrastructure, that community, that tool stack, so that they can really be much more effective at doing what they do best and what they care about doing the most, which is taking great care of the people that they look after.
Right,
and so that's kind of how we have tried to think about that mission, and how we are trying to be uniquely positioned to do that well, by focusing on who we think really matters most in this whole equation, the providers of care.
And do you guys see, because I see more conversations in my real life, 1, because people are opening up about them more, 2, because they're a little more necessary. I think currently a lot more people are kind of struggling than we're used to before. So are you guys at Alma seeing that reflection as well? Are you seeing the conversation being opened up even in your network where you're saturated with it?
Absolutely. I think, pre-COVID, 2 in every 5 adults suffering from a mental illness in the United States, right? It was already a big thing.
Yeah.
But then comes along COVID, and you see now over 60% of people reporting symptoms of anxiety and depression since the beginning of the pandemic. Just this explosion in terms of need. So that's happened. But then I think the other thing that's happened, and this is sort of, you don't like to find any silver lining in a pandemic that's taken so many lives, but this is, I think, one of those spots where you can see a signal of something good. We all experienced this massive collective global trauma. Mm-hmm. Every single person did. It was like living in New York during 9/11, right? Or really in the United States, but particularly in the city of New York, right? Everybody experienced it together. And so there was, I think, this just sort of global shared experience where we were able to be a little bit more vulnerable with one another. And that catalyzed a level of conversation in conjunction with just this growing need that I do think is putting us in a really unique spot to see just a renaissance in terms of how we think about mental illness, but also how we think about preventing mental illness and preventive mental health and preventive mental well-being.
Preventive. Yeah, that's great. I joked to my therapist once, I'm like, I'm never giving you up because I found you out of necessity at first, but you've just kind of become my everyday purge cup of coffee for my wellness. I don't really know how to describe it, but she's sticking around forever because it's, you nailed it. It's preventative, and it's really something I obviously can't endorse enough. But what are some challenges for the healthcare professionals right now? I mean, they're also in the thick of this right now, and the demand is growing.
There are so many. And I think that is why we've seen such incredible acceleration in our business and what we're able to do for our community
Yeah.
in the last year. The first I would mention isn't maybe the most obvious one, but I think it's really fundamental, which is to remember that these providers are experiencing the exact same trauma that all of us are as well. And that was a big focus of our initial conversations at Alma, and a lot of the initial support that we put in place for our community. Our providers needed to process grief, process ambiguity about the future, process anxiety, process their own feeling of loneliness and disconnection from loved ones, and so on and so forth, at the very same time that we were asking them to spend hours of their day in a Zoom call with others experiencing the exact same thing. So self-care, support from a community, solving for that sense of loneliness, giving people that emotional toolkit, I think has been really core and fundamental to what providers need today, and one of the things that we've been really hyper-focused on solving for them. The other is just the business challenge, right? It is really hard to be a small business owner, period, let alone during a time when the walls are flying off the building in terms of just how you do things and how you think about your business. And so where we've been, I think, really able to support our clinicians is, how do you make the transition from in-person care to telemedicine? What are the tools you need? How do you think about the regulatory questions or the legal questions around licensure? And then how do you find clients? How do you take insurance? How do you manage this business that looks a little different than the business looked like a year ago because of all the changes in the world? But you don't really want to be doing that. You want to be doing what matters most, which is those sessions and that time that you're spending with your patients. So those have been, I think, the two biggest areas of challenge, and both really, really important.
So for the people tons of people who already feel defeated about the process before even knowing that something like Alma exists, why is it so hard, or has it been so hard for people to find such high quality, healthcare?
I think there are three reasons.
Mm.
The first is the stigma, right? It is a spot where even for those of us who consider ourselves enlightened on the question of mental health, if I go to a colleague of mine who sees a therapist, let's say a couples therapist, and I say, my partner and I are struggling right now, I could really use support. Even if they're willing to tell you that they see a therapist, are they willing to have you see the same therapist that they see if you and they are friends socially? There's oftentimes just this still remaining stigma that depresses our willingness to refer, to review, to kind of put our hands up and help each other kind of navigate that process. So we lose one of the most fundamental ways that we find good stuff in the world, the referrals and the support and the word of mouth of colleagues and friends. And I think that's, challenge number one.
Right.
Challenge number two is that providers have never been organized in a way where the information is easily available to you and the right information is available to you, right? There have been directories since time immemorial, but they don't provide much, and they don't really provide the depth of experience or the support in really understanding the parameters that matter to you, whether it's you're looking for a therapist who shares your religion or comes from has trained in a particular area of clinical care, right? You don't have that. The third is people just don't understand the differences between a lot of these things, between a nurse practitioner and a physician, between a psychologist and a clinical social worker. And that's where I think of services like Alma's client matching team really helps, where you can get on the phone or interact with a seasoned professional who can help you understand why you might want one thing over the other, and then make sure you're finding options that you can kind of iterate towards. So I think those are some of the challenges that have made it really hard in the past.
Yeah, I keep smiling because I have a million people in my life who've experienced basically every problem that you've landed on so far. So what qualifies as like high quality healthcare, and how will someone who's curious but tentative know that that's what they're getting when they decide to check out Alma?
Yeah. So in our view, there's three big pieces to this. Mm-hmm. First is making sure that the providers who are part of our community have the training, have the skills, have the core competencies necessary to provide high quality care. So providers, when they join Alma, we put them through a credentialing process. We review licensure, any sanctions. Like we make sure that the basics are all there, that we understand that these are providers who have the necessary credentials, training, and ability to provide the need.
Right.
The second thing we do is we focus on training and education. In our view, great providers are not just born, they're made, and it's incredibly important for clinicians to be exposed to evidence-based practice, the latest thinking in terms of new modalities and new treatment ideas. So Esther Perel joined us as a clinical advisor. Guy Winch is another one of our clinical advisors. We do a lot of training and education for providers to try to think about what they need to get exposed to. We've also done a lot of work around our continuing education program, focusing a lot on racial equity, cultural competency, these issues that providers have to be equipped with today to be able to really provide good care. And so that's, I think, part two to it. And then the third part is making sure that we track and understand outcomes and how clients are experiencing care, appreciating that the right provider for me might not be the right provider for you, that there's a lot of questions of fit that need to be thought about, but that we also need to think about how do we objectively try to understand performance, how do we try to understand how people are experiencing care, where they're dropping off, where they're not getting what they need, so that we can continue to innovate the model, the technology, the support infrastructure to try to make people, make sure that people can get the care and the services they need.
It's just like constantly evolving. It sounds like you guys will never be done, and that's a requirement for what
We should never be done. We should never be done. I mean, the whole goal is that there's always more to do. And we should never finish that work, but we should consistently be moving in the right forward direction.
So undertaking, leading a mental health business right now sounds like it would have been a huge undertaking like any year on the calendar, but especially right now. So not to get too personal, but how have you dealt with handling that and, of course, taking care of yourself?
It's a great question. I'm incredibly blessed. I have a wonderful spouse and 3 amazing kids between the ages of 6 and 1. So I've got little ones.
Oh my God, you have such full hands.
We have a busy home, and obviously it's a really challenging year. My wife co-founded a school in New York, which has tried to go through this whole experience of like reopening and all of that. So all the stress and challenge there, kids trying to figure out, do they go to school? Do we keep them home? Virtual, snowed, all these different things. So it's definitely been an intense year. And I think all of us have had that. I imagine anyone listening to this, you've had this, right? These things that you're balancing, finding a path through. For me, the 2 things that have mattered a lot are, one, just constantly reminding myself of the mission and pulling energy from that. We're really lucky that we get to spend a lot of time with our providers. We get to hear from them. We get to see where we're helping them. And I think that just creates a ton of energy and support for everybody, myself included at the team. The second thing has been just trying to be incredibly intentional about time. I think we talked about this before we started, right? Your dog's asleep under your feet right now. My nephew's in the other room. He might wake up anytime, right? We have these things, right? And we're trying to balance, this kind of, it's just easy to bring your work home with you because your work is at home.
Right.
And so how do you create these sort of dividing lines, these time gaps? So for me, the 2 that really matter are my mornings and my Saturdays. I am offline entirely from Friday evening until Saturday evening. So you can't reach me. I don't check email. I don't check my phone. For my team, they know you'll never receive an email from me during that 24-hour window. And my mornings, I wake up every morning with my kids, and I get to have those first 2 hours of the day, which are just mine with them, digital free, really trying to focus on just being there and present. And I find that really helps me maintain that balance.
Yeah, you're a pro at what I am currently working at, which is personal boundaries, respecting, finding, and learning which ones work.
It's so hard. Oh my gosh.
So hard. But good for you. I'm like writing this down for myself. We're past the interview. I'm like, got it. Personal.
No, it's hard, but you have to, in my view, you have to create excessive structure around it. If you just say one evening this week, I'm going to turn off it won't happen. It has to be every Wednesday I do this thing, and it becomes a practice that becomes inviolable. Because without it, you just can't do it.
Right. Woo, I feel good about my personal journey right now.
Yes.
And if this is at all possible, because this year knocked us on our ass, anything feels possible. I'm waiting for aliens. Do you have any predictions for where the mental health care, profession is going in the future, or where we're going as a society when it comes to, mental wellness in that space?
So I think that there's a lot of reason to be optimistic and excited about the future in this space. Um, you've seen this incredible transition to teletherapy, to virtual care. That's sort of opened things up in ways that I think are incredibly powerful for both clients to be able to move around, providers to be able to move around, see people from different walks of life. If you're looking for a provider with a particular expertise, but they don't live within 20 blocks of you, well, guess what? Now you have access to them in a way that you maybe never did before. So I think that there's a lot of sort of technological and business model changes that are going to make it much more accessible for people. I think you're seeing a sea change in terms of just the conversation among policymakers, among insurance companies, healthcare professionals. We're really lucky to have incredible partners on the insurance side who we work with, who are thinking about this in all the right ways and really trying to push the industry forward in the right direction. So I think all of that is really exciting. I think the key question is, will we as a society, and will people like you continue to beat the drum on, yes, this matters, here's how it's helped me, and give others the courage and the resources they need to start their own mental health journey. And I think that will be the key limiting factor in terms of how much greatness we can accomplish over the next few years. It's just how much can we evangelize? How much can we motivate others to see the value and to seek it out?
Yeah, like we have no idea what we're going to be dealing with in the future, but the only sure thing is fighting the stigma constantly will help make it more accessible and, out there for more people whenever the Martians do show up.
They'll at least find us very mentally well. And if that's
exactly
the case, great outcome, we'll take
They're
it.
really upset we're here, but they seem to be processing it nicely. So it's kind of awesome.
I love that.
Before we sign off, I know you guys just launched something like recently, very recently. So do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Well, we were very lucky to share the news yesterday of our latest round of fundraising, which is really exciting. So it's a really exciting milestone for us to have those resources and new partners who will help us take Alma to the next level. We've grown up in the tri-state area, so we're available throughout New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. We'll be up in Massachusetts by the end of the month. But really our goal is to be everywhere and anywhere and to expand to a national presence so that anyone in any 50 state and around the world eventually can get care through the Alma platform. So this was a really exciting moment for us. Brought on board two incredible new investors, Insight Partners and Optum Ventures, who both bring really special and unique new thinking, new motivation, new ideas, new energy to the team. And so we're really excited about what this opportunity means for us in terms of now being able to take what we've created and just scale it up so that it's really something available to everyone anywhere who needs it.
Amazing. I mean, congratulations to that. Congratulations on even creating this in the first place. And on behalf of everyone, thank you. And
for having me.
Good luck. I can't wait to find out what you guys do in the future. I'm sure it's going to be just on par with what everyone needs, whether they know it or not. And this was another episode of CEO Unplugged with Harry/Dr. Ritter. Is the founder and CEO of Alma. Thanks for checking us out.